This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. Jake, your host, and today's episode, if you have that person in the family, maybe a extended family member, when they come to town, they don't want to do anything because they know it all and they've seen it all, or maybe they're just not thrilled by going bowling or things of that nature, this is where you need to take them. It's the Nora Mill Granary, which is just on the outskirts of downtown Helen. This place, I mean, you just talk about absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. This has been there. You talk about something that in our region has stood the test of time for literally centuries now. You know, not just decades, but going on centuries now. The people who have been through this property include U.S. presidents. The demand for the products that come out of this unsuspecting little barn building on the side of the highway, right on the side of the river, going into Helen, are in high demand from people of the likes of Shaquille O'Neal. You talk about a absolute hidden treasure and staple at the same time. It is this facility. Now, I had not tried, in full disclosure, I had not tried some of their products prior to going there. When we went there, as with a lot of the places I go, I like to bring souvenirs home for the family and that sort of thing. My wife absolutely loves grits. Oh my goodness. Like, it's just, we all just need to pause and have a little moment. If you have not had Nora Mill grits, it'll change your world. Take it from me. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I had absolutely no interest in grits. The first time I had grits, I don't know how to say this. I thought a lot less of people in the South. I don't know. I don't know the nice way of saying it. I was like, y'all need some better food down here. You see, I've kind of been converted. Like there's a little twang in there. So just back up off me a minute. And then I had Charleston grits. In Charleston, shrimp and grits. I don't even know the restaurant it was. Some Irish restaurant, I think it was. And absolutely changed my perspective in my world as it relates to grits going past that. The Nora Mill grits are insanely good. I mean, it's until I had them, I'm like, you'll hear about it in the interview, the likes of Shaquille O'Neal out in L.A. is demanding his food supplier get Nora Mill grits shipped out to L.A. to his restaurant. And it doesn't really make sense until you try them, and then you're like, oh, I get it. It's like, oh, perfect sense. And it is. You talk about old-fashioned. Hey, look, if you've got engineers in the family, you've got people who are, there's people who's they're always reading books, or they're always watching stuff on the History Channel, or doing things like that, and they're just not interested in some of the other things that are maybe pop culture or whatever. Hey, this is a great field trip to take them on, whether they're local and they're a relative, or it's a family member who's coming in from out of town for a holiday or something like that. You need to take them up to Helen to the Nora Mill Granary. Again, we just want to say thank you for all of you who are sharing the podcast with your friends, coworkers, your neighbors. We are just so excited to be hearing from people periodically that are new to the area, or really kind of getting plugged in to some of the locally owned small businesses that are in our region that we're featuring. It is a great way to connect with new people, to build friendships, and frankly, as we're all becoming more and more cognizant of supporting our locally owned businesses. And this is one of those. While it is literally generations old, it is still a locally owned small business and is somewhere you need to get to. You know how to find us online: Facebook, Instagram, North Georgia Life Podcast. You can email us always at northgeorgialifepodcast@gmail.com for episodes, information, suggestions on future episodes, anything like that. And with that, we will get started. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It's Jake, your host, and we are here today at probably one of the more fascinating locations in the North Georgia region that I've been to. And it's one of those things that is, people say things are timeless. This is literally timeless because we are at a location that is going on almost 200 years old, and it is still in operation. And not only is it in operation, but it is growing to where we are sending stuff out to the better part of the United States and to very high-end places from kind of an unsuspecting location right here in Helen, Georgia. So we are at the Nora Mill Granary, which is right as you come into downtown Helen. You'll see it. It's a very unassuming, old barn-looking building right on the river. But there's a great story behind this, and we're going to get into some of that today. So we are here with Tommy the Miller, but not Tommy Miller. So, Tommy, thanks for taking your time.
Thanks for coming, Jake.
So, Tommy, I don't even know where to begin as far as the story itself, because this story of this location goes back to the 1800s.
Right.
So, I guess let's start there.
Okay. Well, first of all, my name's Tommy Martin. I've been working for this family since the middle 80s. Mm-hmm. This family that runs the mill now has been here since the middle 70s.
Okay.
The mill goes back to 1876, this section. The section next to us was 1824.
Okay.
There was Daniel Brown built that mill in the 1820s, and John Martin came in with Captain Nichols bought 1,000 acres from the Brown family, and John Martin bought 1,000 acres, but he bought the mill with the 1,000 acres, and he built a huge hydraulic gold mining company.
Uh-huh.
And became very prosperous, and they started talking about outlawing the hydraulic gold mining, and John wanted to build something that was going to make him money, and he built this huge mill. Now, the story goes that he was a miller from California that moved here to hydraulic gold mine.
Okay.
All right. So he knew what a water turbine was.
Uh-huh.
This is not a paddle wheel. It's a cast iron turbine from 1876, Rome, Georgia. It works off of water pressure. Mm-hmm. And so many people think of old water-powered mill, they think of a paddle wheel.
Right.
And paddle wheels were not invented, or turbines were not invented to generate electricity. They were invented 60 years before electricity replaced paddle wheels.
Wow.
With a higher efficiency rate.
Huh.
And this mill was just state-of-the-art. And there's elevator cups and grain elevators, and the elevator cup system was invented by a gentleman named Oliver Evans in George Washington's day.
Oh, wow.
The first automated mill you used to have to carry, and there was a lot of little mills that didn't have the money that this man had. And they had to carry their corn to the hopper. They had to pick up the ground product and process that, where ours is grain going up and down elevator cups, moving it by the grain elevators. Huh. And the stones that we have came from the Marne River Valley in France, 1876. And as time went along, Captain Nichols was getting old, and he John Martin wound up selling it to Captain Nichols. Mm-hmm. And Captain Nichols' farm is the Hardman farm down here at the state park now. Yep. Well, the Hardmans came in 1902 and bought the 2,000 acres from Captain Nichols.
Gotcha.
Captain Nichols bought it from John Martin. They rejoined the 2,000 acres that Daniel Brown originally had. Mm-hmm. Well, the Hardmans bought it, and the Hardmans owned it, but they were a very wealthy family, and they didn't want to work as hard as some of the millers have to work. And so they leased the building to different individuals. And when you lease the mill, you lease 300 acres, and the house across the street is called the Martin House. Uh-huh. And John Martin and Tommy Martin are not related that I know of.
Okay.
It's just my last name's the same as the man that built the mill. But over the years, different families, you may have came in here and leased the mill for 15 years, and the next guy leased it for 3.
Yeah. So
different people lived here and ran the mill and lived across the street up until the Fain family that I worked for, Ron Fain. And Ron got this going for his father, born in 1897, George Fain Sr. And I've been fortunate enough to work for George Fain Sr., Ron Fain, Joanne Fain, Tarpley, his daughter, and now I'm working for her son, Joe Vandergrift, the 4th generation.
Wow.
And they're a very good family. They've been here for a long time. And Ron was a lieutenant colonel, and he was a very smart businessman. And today we have the internet, websites, all kinds of ways of reaching out to people from nowhere. Well, back in the old days, our recipe cards had a mail order form on the back. So when a tourist came in and bought a bag, took it home, they could fill out a form, write a check, and send it to us. And we've been shipping here since the middle 70s.
Wow.
And it's just grown. We've shipped all over the country. The water power, I do every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Some weekends I do have a weekend off every now and then. And but if the river's too high, I can't grind on the water power. And if the river's too low, I've been here since the 80s, and it's been 9 years that we didn't have enough water coming down the Chattahoochee River.
Wow.
So they used to have a big motor and a tractor that would run the belts and the pulleys, and we converted all that. We don't use the big millstones when it's not raining. We have a 1950 model mill upstairs that we purchased because we have so many different customers. We send for anywhere from 15 to 2,000 pounds a month to New York.
Wow.
The shrimp and grit craze is just going crazy in this country right now.
New Englanders finally got it.
Well, it took them putting shrimp on the grits before they'd eat them. And we have mom and pop restaurants in Maryland that's been buying from us for 30, 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And there's places all across the country. And I mentioned earlier that Shaquille O'Neal opened up his first restaurant in L.A.
Yeah.
Across from the Staples Center called Shaquille's. And U.S. Food caters his business.
Yeah,
well, and Shaquille O'Neal told U.S. Foods that he wanted Nora Mill grits. Well, they don't sell Nora Mill grits. Shaquille says, well, I'm not buying your grits. He says, I want Nora Mill grits. So U.S. Foods called about 7 months ago and set up an account just for Shaq.
Wow.
And we send 20, 30 pounds a week out there to him.
That's amazing.
And, but he's never been in here that I know of. But like I say,
you'd know if he came in.
Oh, yeah. Well, we send a ton a month to Vegas.
Really?
We have food distributors that buy large quantities from us. And our product is a whole grain product. And that's one of the things that's night and day difference. When you eat quick grits that you buy in the grocery store, they've been degerminated, mass produced. Ours is we're able to grind the oil. Mass production, they had to take the germ out of our grains to mass produce, and that's why the word enriched was invented.
Right.
But ours is whole grain. The farmers did not want. There was 4 roller mills here from the late 1800s.
Okay.
That produced 28 times the grain per day that the millstones would. But the farmers did not want theirs dissected, degerminated, mass produced. And it was 1940 before they ever started putting vitamins and minerals in our food again.
Yeah.
The word enriched was not invented for us. It was invented for the military. Well, when you cook quick grits and put shrimp on them, and when you cook Nora Mill grits and put shrimp on them, it's a night and day difference. And now up north, they broke through their phobia, their grit phobia.
Yeah.
And now they're eating grits now.
Yeah.
But I classify myself as a grit counselor.
Yeah.
Because I walk a lot of Northerners through their fear of grits. It's just amazing how the word grits is slang from, and it happened years ago. Man. It was poor people and slaves could go into the mill. Used to, when you sifted cornmeal, you sift it through a screen, and there was a little piece of corn that would not fit through the screen. And that was a byproduct of cornmeal. Because poor people could go into the mill and buy 50 pounds of that byproduct for the same price as a small bag of cornmeal. Those were called grits. A grit is just a sized particle of anything.
Right.
They sell sandpaper in different sized grit.
Right.
A grit that we eat, grits, is just a certain size particle of corn. Well, because it was called byproduct, people up north thought we was eating hog feed and chicken feed because it was a byproduct.
Right.
And it was just a healthy way of, it was a whole grain product. And poor people were able to survive. And that's why there was a stigma involved. See, they will eat polenta, which are grits.
Right.
The cornmeal are grits. It's just a different size grit.
Yeah.
And but because it's called grits, they wouldn't touch them for years because of that stigma involved in it. Now, a lot of people come in here and say, I ate grits one time and didn't like them and swore I'd never eat another one. But they ate Waffle House processed food,
Right.
not stone ground whole grain grits. So we have samples out for the tourists to try.
Yeah.
And people come in, and it's just night and day difference.
You see a lot of eyebrows getting raised, I bet.
Well, we have a lot of tour buses during peak season.
Yeah.
Our Oktoberfest is really, really popular here.
Right.
And but during Thanksgiving and Christmas is our busiest time of year because of Christmas gifts. We have families all across the country. We have companies that send their employees all their employees, and you have anything from a $20 gift to a $150 family package, and we do a lot between Thanksgiving and Christmas for Christmas gifts. And but the family that's been doing this that I work for are real proud of their product. And I've been doing this. I speak on the weekends now. Tomorrow I'll be grinding on the water power.
Okay.
And I had a couple little girls that come in a while ago, 6, 7 years old, that I let them help me get corn over there, and they just have a blast when they're coming back tomorrow while I'm grinding, so they can help me again. And I love to educate people and just talk about history and just and I learn so much from other people telling me a story. And I get a lot of old timers that come in that talk about going to the mill when they were little, and it's just a real passion for me. I just love talking to people, and I love educating. Yeah. And I love history. And but
so the millstones that are out here, those came here from France, and they're the original ones that were here.
Well, the quality of the stone was significant.
Yeah,
you had to have money.
It's seen a few miles.
Well, you had to have money to buy the French stones.
I gotcha.
There's quarries all over France, and you want the pink granite that came from the Marne River Valley. Those particular stones are a higher quality of granite. And you know, women are learning more about granite today because of granite countertops.
Right.
And they know that different types of granite come from all different places in the world.
Right.
Well, it was the same back then with the grinding stones. Now, there was quarries now in North Carolina that we didn't know we had in 1800s. That's putting out some good pink granite right now.
Yeah, could have saved on some shipping back then.
Well, and it would, but the quality and the hardness is still not pink granite from the Marne River Valley. The Greek and Romans started finding stones that did not break apart. The groove patterns on the millstones out here, Greek and Roman. When I'm grinding, I'm smelling of the ground product to make sure that I don't smell any grindstone. If the stones ever touch, you won't get rocks in your grist. It's a misconception that particles of rock are getting in. There was a part of history, but that was 2000. That was the Egyptians and the indigenous Indians that was happening to. The Greeks and Romans started finding stones that did not break apart.
Okay.
However, if they touch for an extended period of time, it will eventually wear down the groove patterns over an extended period of time. But you don't want that to happen. So you smell of the ground product to make sure you don't smell any grindstone. The only way to make the stones last is by keeping your nose to the grindstone, stay focused, and everything will be all right. There's a rhythm sound. There's a piece of metal spinning in the center of the millstones that's called a damsel by the Greek and Romans. They invented that. And it's hitting it's called a shoe, and it vibrates and knocks the corn into the hole. That's the only way to regulate the flow of corn. Well, that rhythm is making a rhythm sound, and I listen to that rhythm all day long. George Fain Sr., born in 1897, was sitting in a rocking chair on the other side of the mill rocking to that rhythm, and he'd look at me and say, "Boy, your corn's getting low over there."
How about that?
And I go over there and look, and the corn was low. He said, "No matter where you're at in this mill, you listen to your damsel. This world would be a lot better place if every man listened to their damsel like I listen to mine." He says, if you're standing on the other side of that mill and that rhythm changes, you go running, your damsel's in distress.
So keeping your nose to the grindstone and damsel in distress have both come from this
a mill,
industry.
right?
How
now,
about that?
The damsel in distress that we know of with a princess or fairy tales, that came out of the 1300s. Well, 1300 years before that, the Greek and Romans invented the damsel for the millstone.
Wow.
So the first time damsel in distress was written down, it was in the Canterbury Tales in the 1300s.
How about that?
But there's just so many sayings that come out of the old mills. And there's different things that I talk about all the time while I'm here. But the key is to not get all wrapped up in the nostalgia and everything
Sure.
that goes around, because you're this close to some of the best cornmeal and best grits that you're ever going to put in your mouth. And we have everything from moonshine jelly to pickled jalapenos, you know. And the thing is you know, I can't mess with the moonshine. I'm allergic to moonshine.
Okay.
I break out in handcuffs every time I drink that stuff. So I had to quit drinking moonshine years ago. But there's a lot of good stuff to see, and I love, just like I say, just bring your kids. If you have a group of more than 12 and would like to come in and do a special grinding during the week, I very rarely grind on the Old Stones unless I have tour buses or a group coming. I do school groups, church groups, retirement communities, and just give us a couple of 2 or 3 weeks head start.
Yeah.
And if I'm not working that particular day during the week, I come in and do a special grinding for those groups.
Okay.
And
so all the ordering that you've taken over the years that you've been here, just curiosity question. I'm certain that Shaquille O'Neal's not making those phone calls himself, but have you ever gotten to meet or talk to any of the household names that people know?
Well, there's been a lot of people that's come in here over the years. Before Herbert Hoover was president, he inspected our mill.
Really?
There was a white biscuit showing up in Washington, D.C., and they weren't bleaching flour back then. And Herbert Hoover came, and he was the Secretary of Commerce at the time, and he came down to inspect what was going on. And they were grinding rice and making a rice flour, and it was white.
Huh.
And that's how they got a white biscuit instead of the grayish brown of the whole wheat. And but now I've met a few people that's come in, and there's been a lot of celebrities come through Helen.
Yeah.
Kenny Bergamy from the Georgia Farm Monitor TV station, the Farm Bureau. And I didn't know Kenny at the time. I just give tours to people, and I just talk to people like I've known them my whole life.
Yeah.
And Kenny called back and talked to Joe, and Joe asked him if we'd come up and do a segment on us. Well, when Kenny came, he said, maybe you'll remember me from now on when I leave. And because I don't know if it offended him that I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
But I meet a lot of people like that, and then they, 2 months, 3 months later, they call and say, "Can we do a segment with you?"
And you've been, and this mill and the products from this mill. You're telling me you've been on Food Network.
Food Network.
I mean, you've been
Farm Monitor.
Yeah.
Tokyo flew a crew out here from Japan, and they did a 12, 15-minute segment, and it was on VHS, stored in a box at my father's house. I've got to dig it out, and but it's they probably did one of the best segments on us.
So let's go into just for a quick second into the corn that you're using to mill.
Okay.
That's been grown locally for a long time.
No, we used to.
That's from Kentucky?
All of our corn comes from southern Kentucky.
Okay.
Over the years, we were using local farmers. And a lot of people don't really, they hear GMO, non-GMO. They don't realize that I have people that grow open pollinated, genetically non-GMO, but they don't dry it special. You have to dry it to kill the aflatoxin. There's an invisible mold that forms under the shuck. And over the years of us buying from local farmers, it just wasn't the quality that we wanted. So we found this farm. We tried to find some food grade corn in Georgia, but all the food grade farmers, which are very rare, are contracted out. So we found a family in southern Kentucky, and it's the same corn 8 months from now, 3 years from now. They're not going to swap corn because the guy told them you get a better bushel per acre.
Right.
And it's going to be guaranteed the same corn. And we have to have a certificate of analysis today. Back when we started doing this with them, we weren't required.
Right.
And one day the state of Georgia pulled up and said that we all going to have a certificate of analysis, and we had a file cabinet full of them. And it's just a higher quality of corn. The family that's been growing corn, they've been doing it since 1920, 100 years this year.
Wow.
And so it's a 4 or 5 generation family that grows corn. And we get transfer truck hauls down here to our farm where we have storage capacity for about 100,000 pounds of corn.
Wow.
And I just go back and forth as we need it with a 6,000 pound dump truck.
Wow.
But It's the old-timey field corn. It's white dent and yellow dent, and it's just a really good quality of corn. It's a high grade, and the drying process, they have to take it off the field. You have to leave it on to dry to 16% moisture content. And most farmers let Mother Nature dry it to 16. That's where the mold.
That's where the mold comes in.
So ours has to be taken off at 27% moisture content off the field. Still hard, but it has to be dried to 16 to kill that aflatoxin.
Okay.
And it makes a higher quality, but it costs more because of that drying process.
Sure.
But it's just a really neat process, and I explain a lot of that. And there's a lot of things that's going on today with propaganda, and it's everywhere. And there's meal companies that tell you to buy a meal because your grains start oxidization immediately upon grinding. Well, there's mills does. They don't tell you it's their meal that does it.
Yeah.
The old stones don't do it. But the way you buy in the grocery store is just so many chemicals in our food now in the grocery store. And ours is just pure corn. The grits are pure corn. The cornmeal makes some of the best cornbread. And we're going to get this same corn 8 months from now, 3 years from now, so you'll get the same consistent product over and over.
And that farm's been making the same corn for 100 years.
Yeah. And
that's pretty special.
Yeah, and they are really good people. But like I say, there's just so much involved. But you can go to noramill.com and pull it up online, and there's all kinds of order forms and different things that you can use to. And Christmas time, we have some discounts that you can buy special things and get some.
You have any? So you've been here how long now?
Since '89.
'89. Okay. Any best memories, favorite stories, things you've told 1,000 times?
Well, it's hard to be as enthusiastic at 4 o'clock as it is at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I do a pretty good job. But I have kids that came in here years ago that are bringing their kids in here to see me, and that's one of the biggest thrills that I have is when you can see a little girl who's got an engineer's mind that looks at all the gears and pulleys turning and everything's running, and they just standing there at awe. And when I spend a few minutes with them, it's just amazing how uninformed Americans are on the old-timey ways of doing things. And it's nothing wrong. I'm 62 years old this year, and there's folks my age that have never seen anything like this. And I've just fortunately been around it since I was a little boy. I plowed mules, I milked cows, I've done things that a lot of people my age haven't done. And to see the kids get wrapped up. I had this little 7-year-old girl come in, and I was showing her the pulleys, and I told them, study your math. This is why the different size pulleys make different things spin different speed. And I always try to promote Georgia Tech when I'm doing this, and especially if their parents are wearing a Georgia Bulldog hat. And so I tell the little kids to study your math real good, because this is when you go to Georgia Tech, you want to be up to date on your math. Well, the little girl, I run off, and the mother come up and she says she's really not that good in math, and she's not really mechanically inclined. And a year passed, and the mother come in, she says, "What did you do to my daughter?"
Oh, wow.
Everything math, everything mechanical, the little girl was interested in. Her math excelled. And, and I'm not claiming credit, but it's just when the student appears, you can start really touch them. And that's one of the things that really makes my day, is to see the kids get excited. And of course, by doing that, the parents get excited.
That's right. And when people come into the location here, you've got the merchandise out, the product out, but you've also, you can look at right before your eyes the actual mechanics of the mill, the components, all the things. It's like kind of walking almost through a museum. It's like walking back in time. And it's literally right in that little white unassuming building, right on the side of the road, by the river.
And there's mills across the country that will not let you see the millstones unless you pay an admission. They have a store to sell their product, and then you have to pay to go back there. And ours is all right here together.
It's like an amusement park. Yeah, come ride the ride and then go exit through the gift shop.
But it's just really amazing how educational it is, and how much people think a certain thing about products or history, and they really don't realize the time periods of that history.
Right.
I knew I studied it, but I didn't know that happened 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And but it's just really neat to see the kids, and that's my thing. Now the fourth generation, there's like 4 or 5 grandkids, and now they all got babies, and they're coming in, and they get around the millstones, and the Hardmans have been coming in since I've been here, and the Hardmans all bring their family and friends up, and it's just really entertaining to me to see the kids come back and want to see. I have a little girl that was 7 years old from Thomaston, and she started coming in when she was 7, and I started letting her help me. And I let them move a little lever, and that corn fall through the floor, and it goes to the hopper where I'm grinding. And they think they're doing something, and and she's been coming, and she never forgets my birthday, and she's like 13 this year.
Wow.
And but it's just amazing how they say if you're kind to a child, they never forget you. And I just love teaching. I really do. And I like teaching the old timers as well as the middle aged. Now I may pick on you a couple of times while you're here, but you can pick right back. I do real well with people picking back.
So week to week, is the weekend the predominant time that the mill is actually in operation if the water levels are right and everything?
Right.
Okay.
The weekends is when there's enough people in town for me to wear the components of the old mill.
Yeah.
During the week, if there's nobody in here, I have a 1950 model mill we put in 1989 because of droughts.
Okay.
No water power. And we were selling to companies and restaurants all across the country, and we just couldn't tell them, we'll wait till it rains and we'll send you some grits.
Yeah.
So we bought Mr. Ron Fane bought a 1950 model mill off of a tractor, and we converted it over to a 3-phase motor upstairs. In fact, that's what I was grinding on this morning until you got here, Jake, and I was mixing pancakes and hush puppy mix, but there was only like 6 or 8 people that walked in here this morning.
So I'm fascinated by, I mean, do you guys like know how people find out about you?
There's just word of mouth. I have family.
It's like somebody in Wisconsin. Hey, there's this place in Georgia, in North Georgia, that we get this from.
Well, I have families that come in and they say, I'm going to take this back to my brother. He runs a restaurant in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And so they take it back to their brother. He cooks it, loves it, and he starts ordering from us. We sponsored the Shrimp and Grit Festival in Jekyll Island in 2014 or 2015. And we got so many customers down there because they just had never heard of Nora Mill grits. And the shrimp and grits are just really phenomenal right now in this country. And we want a high grade product.
Right.
And we bag it individually by hand. There's no machines bagging it, and we want it to be a high quality product that you're going to get. Now, the way that they can order 2,000 and 2,400 pounds of grits at a time is we do not put additives and preservatives in our food. Additives, preservatives, and the expiration date showed up in the late 70s. They told us it was going to keep our food fresh. It makes it go bad on the expiration date. You cannot buy a bulk like my grandmother and my father did. They used to buy 40 pounds of everything and didn't go to the grocery store but every 2 months. That's the way they were raised. So they put chemicals in their food with the expiration date to make them keep going to the grocery store buying small bags. We make more money on small bags. We want you to, I want to educate you on how to shop for whole grains. And if you like the grits that you taste, we have cornbread cooked in the bag. And if you like that cornbread, people's brainwashed by the food industry to buy small quantities because it's going to go bad. Ours, we have the food industry. We have a food distributor out of Connecticut that orders 2,000, 3,000 pounds of grits at a time. And they put it, as long as you store it properly in an airtight container in a cold place, it'll last forever. There's no. We have a family from Birmingham that drives here every 4 or 5 years and takes 190 pounds of cornmeal back to Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
Put it in Ziploc freezer bags, throw it in the freezer, and it'll last forever.
How about that?
But it's just learning It's a learning thing about learning how to shop for them, as well as the fact that we can ship your brother some in Minnesota that can't find grits in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah.
And so the biggest thing is the Nora Mill website. And that's what Debbie's been in here doing all morning, was going through and doing mail orders. And some days we have a UPS truck full, and some days we don't have many orders at all. So we just do I grind when it's needed.
Yeah.
And but on the weekends I try to cater to the customers, because there's a lot of foot traffic in Helen, Georgia.
People come up on the weekends. Odds are they're going to see the mill in operation, be able to experience the store, all the sights, literally the sights and sounds. And it's loud enough when you go on the back deck like we were. You've got the waterfall and the dam right there. So give us just kind of a short history on the dam. You said the dam was rebuilt in the 90s.
We rebuilt it in the 90s. It was patched in the 80s. If you go on, there's the movie I'd Climb the Highest Mountain. Part of it was filmed out back here with Susan Hayward and Rory Calhoun. And if you look at the dam in that movie, it's just amazing how rickety it looked. And they had boards propping it up, and but it's a wooden dam. And Mr. Ron Fain not only was a lieutenant colonel, smart businessman, he was a history antique buff. And we would travel all over the United States. He had an antique store in town. I was restoring his antique furniture. And he bought me 2 books written in the 1890s, How to Build a Grist Mill. And that's where I learned how to build a dam.
Really?
From a book written in the 1890s. And I had to they used me as a consultant on this one for a guy from MIT structural engineer. But he just didn't know how he knew physics. I don't know physics.
Right.
And to the point that he does. And but he just didn't know how to go about building the dam.
Wow.
And I've just been very blessed, Jake, to be around a bunch of smart old timers, and my work ethic, and I have a lot of my granny and my mama and my daddy in me, that the ability to talk a little bit too much. And but I love to talk, and I love
you
people.
Better be able to talk when you got the longevity and the history and the stories in a property and a project like this.
Right.
If you're a shut-in introvert, you know.
But there's a lot of millers that were. That is really, and the thing is when you come in and want a tour, you got to give me a time limit, because I can go for 30, 40 minutes, and or I can do a quick 5-10 minute tour. But that dam out there, in the 1800s, the dam was 5 foot taller. There was no Corps of Engineers. There was no City of Helen. So you could harness that much more water, and it would flood the valley up here, going toward Helen. And it had a big reservoir of water for droughts. And so that when it wasn't raining, very little water coming down the river, you still had the elevation of the water level. The turbine works off the heights of the water, not the flow like a paddle wheel does.
Okay.
So when that water level gets low, you have to use more water to get the turbine. It's internal, and it's water pressure. And when the water level gets too low, it just cuts off. So back in the old days, when there was nothing and there was really no guidelines or anything involved, the dam was a lot higher.
Okay.
And so we've, over the years, have dropped it down, because basically the only thing I'm running on it is the old millstones now. But it's really a fascinating, and it's really, really funny to see real educated people have the hardest time figuring out how it works. And and a little 7-year-old girl can figure it out in 5 minutes, and it's like, but it's just amazing how enjoyable it is.
So something I like to do before the end of every episode is what I call lightning round, which is a question that has nothing to do about anything. Some of the younger generation are not going to know who either of these two people are, but I know you do. So the question is titled "What About Bob?" And it is who is the better Bob Seger or Bob Dylan?
Seger.
Seger. Why?
I just like old time rock and roll.
Okay. There's no wrong answer.
No, his song "Old Time Rock and Roll" is a really good song.
All right. So the website is NORAMILL, NoraMill.com.
Right, NoraMill1word.com.
Okay, and same thing on Facebook, Instagram. I assume just Nora Mill on the website.
Nora Mill Granary on the Facebook.
Granary. Okay. And the Facebook and Instagram are Nora Mill Granary, which is GRANARY. So for people who are interested, you've got videos, you've got a lot of pictures, descriptions, but
it also has order form.
And order forms. And I would say for anybody that we've done a couple episodes up this direction, you can go with. Let's see, we did Unicoi, we've done Jumping Goat Coffee, we've got a couple more that are coming up this direction. You can make a day trip out of it, just coming up and doing some of these locations. The Hardman Farm we did, you can stop there as well. And but it's one of those things you really kind of got to step inside. You can look at pictures, and it's kind of, it's neat, but when you actually are standing before it and it's three-dimensional and you see it working, it is really just fascinating. It is to think that someone created this, effectively in their mind before they did anything else 200 years ago, before there was the internet, among other things.
Well, that's where Ron was really good at incorporating that, and the mill's full of antiques.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that don't like to shop. So they walk around looking at antiques while the women are doing the shopping.
There you go, all the husbands of the world. You got something to look
at. Now the daughter, Joanne Fain Tarpley, she's really did a good job on the internet when it first came out. And it's just really a pleasure to have you here, Jake. We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, Tommy, this has been great. We will definitely be up. We've got a plan. A Helen Day up here soon, definitely before it gets to be. I try to avoid Helen in October.
Well,
I don't like sitting in traffic.
A lot of people do, and it's amazing if you come during the week. A lot of shops are closed uptown this time of year, where you have to come on the weekends, and or you don't get to see the full benefit.
Right.
See, during the week, we this time of year we open late and close early because the foot traffic is low. We come in, get our orders done, ship, because some weeks, let's see, last week we had a 2,400 pound grid order.
Wow.
And today there's 2 little boxes sitting,
right,
and that's all we've gotten.
Yeah.
But I've got a 480 pound order going to Florida.
Wow.
Monday morning. So, but come see us. Hope you enjoy it when you come. If you have any questions, make sure you holler at somebody, and we'll try to get your questions out.
Tommy, I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks. This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live.